Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be checking out a 120 amp hour 12 volt battery from Redodo. And the kicker is that it's a group 24. So they packed in all of that amp hour into a group 24 battery. So let's go ahead and open it up and see what we have. Alright, when you first open your battery, you are going to see a product manual and something that says your post bolts are here. And oh, look at this. This is actually the first time I've ever opened a battery that has its own dedicated wrench. And it actually says on here, here are some important tips for securing your terminal bolts. Tighten the terminal bolts with the socket wrench provided until they can be no longer turned and the spring washer is completely flattened. And it shows you an example. I have never seen that before, and I like the fact that the wrench is covered in plastic so you cannot get zapped by it. It's actually insulated. And your post bolts don't have the Phillips head screwdriver on them. They are actual bolts. So I like that change. Even though it could be a little more inconvenient, it's a lot more safe when you're actually using the correct equipment. And I want to say, in all honesty, you really should get a torque wrench if you're going to do it proper. But this is a great step. I like this. And then we have the battery. All right, I just wanted to show you the size difference between this Group 24 and this Group 31 battery. This right here, this Redodo, was the very first 100 amp hour 12 volt battery I've ever reviewed. If you go back in my reviews, you'll probably watch it and be like, that guy didn't show me anything. This was a terrible review. But I also wanted to let you know that this battery right here, even though it's probably, I don't know, 3.5 years old, it still works just fine. I have absolutely no issues with this battery whatsoever. It's all discolored, and you can see that it's 100 amp hours when this new one is 120, and the case is that size. So it's amazing how the technology has changed. Now you can fit more capacity in a smaller case. And like I said before, this is a 12 volt 120 amp hour battery. So that actually gives you 1,536 available watt hours of capacity in here. It does have a 120 amp BMS as well. So you can power up to you can max out a 1,500 watt inverter. I'll be connecting a 2,000 watt inverter to this because I think that will be the perfect setup for it. I am interested in what happens when you go over the 120 amps, but I don't really care if you can go like to 300 amps because you shouldn't do that. I'm actually more interested in connecting this up to a 2,000 watt inverter and seeing which one shuts off first, the battery or the 2,000 watt inverter, because of the high amperage event that we're going to put it through. But just like with every other battery, the first thing you should do when you receive your battery is check the voltage to make sure that the battery is operational. So let's go ahead and check the voltage on this battery right here. And we have 13.11. That is a perfect delivery when it comes to voltage. All right, and the next thing you want to do with your battery is go ahead and charge it all the way up to 100%. So I'm going to go ahead and charge this all the way up to 100% using just a 20 amp lithium iron phosphate charger. And then I'm going to do a capacity test to make sure that we have at least the 120 amp hours that we paid for. So let me go ahead and do those and I'll be right back. All right, well, the capacity test is done for this 120 amp 12.8 volt lithium iron phosphate battery from Redodo. And let's look at the charge curve right now. And looking at this full curve, it is super flat, which is always nice to see. At the very beginning, it quickly drops down to, it looks like 12.76 volts, at the first 5% of the test. And that's a pretty low drop. But then if you look at the 90th, it's still at 12.1. So it goes from 12.7 to 12.1 in almost the entire capacity of the battery. So that is a nice flat curve, and that's what we want to see. If we look at the capacity down at the bottom, you can see that the capacity equaled out to 122.3 amp hours. So just over the 120 amp hour that we thought we were going to get. And see, one thing that I find interesting is that the average voltage is 12.49. Now, the average voltage of one of these 12.8 volt batteries is 12.8 volts nominal. So that is a bit below what I thought it should be. So that's just an interesting thought. But overall, it looks like the battery did just fine with capacity test, and the curve charge looks good. So we're going to go ahead and hook this battery up to a 2000 watt inverter, and we're going to try to max out that inverter to see what the battery does. It does say that it should handle 1500 watts continuous just fine. But what happens if we try to push it to like 18, 19, or 2000 watts? Will the battery shut off, or will it just keep humming along? All right, I have everything ready for my 2000 watt test, so let me show you what I got going on. All right, here's the battery. I also have a voltmeter right here, so it's currently at 13.64 volts. We will monitor that during the test. And we also have an amp clamp right here. Let's go ahead and turn on the light. And it is powering 0.27 amps right now, because that is what the inverter is taking. This is a LEESKY pure sine wave inverter. It is 2000 watts, and it does push out 122 volts AC, which is very nice. Over on this side, we have two 1000 watt appliances. We have an Elite Gourmet hot plate and a griddle. So let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to blast this on. It's going to be an instant 2000 watts. The inverter is going to freak out, and we'll see what happens with the battery. And actually, I want to grab a clock. So let me grab a clock. All right, and now we have a clock. So let me go ahead and just start this and start. Okay, first let's turn on our inverter. Inverter's on. All right, so let's go ahead and click on the griddler and the Elite Gourmet. All right, both of those are on. We are pulling 212 amps from the battery. We are down to 12.49. And the inverter shut off. So that tells me let's go ahead and push it up to a 3000 watt inverter. 12 amps from the battery. We are down to 12.49. Okay, so I went ahead and swapped this out with a 3000 watt inverter, so now the inverter will not be the issue if anything happens. So let's go ahead and power up these two units again and see if the battery shuts off or if it just keeps running for at least a couple minutes. So first we'll start our timer again, and then let's go ahead and turn these on. All right, both of those are on. The fan on the inverter just turned on. We have 210 amps going through the cable. And the battery just shut off. That's awesome. Okay. All right, so that is exactly the way that we want it to work. We want the battery to shut off after a few seconds of being in that 200 amp range. But I do want to see what happens if we run it right around 1500 watts. So I'm going to go ahead and swap out one of these with a 500 watt appliance, and we'll try the test again. Okay, now our setup is a 1000 watt Elite Gourmet and a 500 watt heater. So that's 1500 watts, which should roughly be around 130 to 140 amps. So we're going to see if the battery can handle that for a few minutes. So let's go ahead and turn these on. Here we go. Start our timer. And we are pulling right around 138 amps, and our battery is down to 12.67 volts. And as these heat up, the amperage will go down, but it looks like it's trying to stay stable at about 135 amps. So we're going to keep this running for just a couple minutes, just to make sure it can pull it off. All right, well, it's been a little bit over 2 minutes. You can see that we are still pulling 139 amps, and the battery is at 12.55 volts. So even though this is a 120 amp BMS, it can handle 135 amps just fine. But if you go over 200 amps, it will instantly shut off within just a few seconds. And that is exactly what we want to see. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put it in a freezer, probably set it to about 25 degrees Fahrenheit. And we're going to see, Keats.
What?
I don't want you waving in the background. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take this battery and put it in a freezer and set it to about 25 degrees Fahrenheit. That way we can see if the battery does have low temperature charging protection. All right, well, I've had this Redodo 120 amp 12 volt battery in this set power cooler set on 25 degrees for the last 18 hours. So it is nice and cold. And actually, if I go ahead and pull up the app that goes with the battery, you can see that our state of charge is 89%. You can see the power, the current voltage of the battery, and the capacity remaining. And then also you can see that the cells are balanced. You can also see that the battery is optimal condition and the BMS is working normally. If you go down to battery info, you can see the device name, the serial number, the version number, and the temperature, which right now the temperature is -6 degrees Celsius. So this battery should shut off because it's below 0 degrees Celsius. So that's what we're testing right now. So let's go ahead and pull this battery out of this cooler and put it right on the bench and try to charge it. All right, whoa, that's pretty close. All right, as you can see, I'm trying to do this all in one take, so you know there's no funny business, but we do have our LiTime 20 amp charger right here, and the light is currently flashing green. That means it's on standby. What's gonna happen is I'm gonna go ahead and hook it up. It's gonna go to a solid green. It's going to go to a solid red, meaning that it's charging only for a couple seconds, and then the battery is going to tell it to shut off, and it will switch to a solid green. Basically, the battery telling the charger to stop saying it's fully charged. So let's go ahead and connect the negative to negative. And let's go ahead and watch the app too to see if anything happens with that. And positive to positive. Watch this light. Here we go. Solid red. And solid green saying that the battery shut off due to low temperature charge and protection. And on the app, you can actually see that it shows BMS. The BMS has gone into protection mode to keep the device safe. And then below that, it shows low temperature protection. So it works exactly the way that it should. So what do I think of this Redodo 120 amp 12 volt lithium iron phosphate battery? I like it. I think it's really perfect for like trolling motors because look how small this is. And you know, and it's only like, it's not even 24 pounds. I think it's 23.8 pounds and it's group 24, so it's nice and small. This thing, I mean, you can take it anywhere and it gives you, it gives you 1,500 watts of power with a 600 amp 1 second push. So, yeah, I think for somewhere that's a small confined area like a boat, I think it's perfect. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions about this Redodo, please go ahead and leave them in the comments. I'll have a link to this item and everything else I used in my description, just in case you want to look further into it. Thanks again, and have a great day. Bye-bye.